At the very top of the world, something big is happening. The Arctic, once a frozen, unreachable expanse, is melting. And as the ice disappears, it's revealing something incredible: oil, gas, rare minerals, and shipping routes that could change the way the world trades forever. This is no longer a place for explorers and scientists. Now it's a chessboard for superpowers. Russia, China, NATO, all racing to counter the last great frontier on Earth. And this race will reshape not just the Arctic, but Europe, Africa, and the entire global economy. Let's break this down. The Arctic, a vast, frozen frontier at the very top of our planet. It's an ocean surrounded by some of the most remote lands on Earth, stretching across parts of Canada, Russia, Greenland, the United States, Norway, and more. At over 14 million square kilometers, it's almost the size of Europe and Australia combined. For most of history, the Arctic was seen as an unreachable wilderness, a place of endless ice, midnight suns, and months of darkness. But today it's becoming one of the most contested and strategic regions on the planet, as melting ice opens new shipping routes and exposes untapped resources. It may look empty on map, but the Arctic is anything but quiet. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet, and when the ice melts, new opportunities appear. Under that ice lies 13% of world's undiscovered oil, 30% of untapped natural gas, and rare minerals we need for satellites, electric vehicles, smartphones, basically for modern life itself. Then there is the shipping revolution. 2 new lines, the Northern Sea route along Russia's coast and the Northwest Passage through Canada, could slash travel times between Asia and Europe by up to 15 days. That means lower costs, faster deliveries, and billions of dollars saved. But in geopolitics, every shortcut is also a shortcut to tension. Who gets to use these routes? Who controls them? And who decides the rules? Russia has the biggest stake in this race. It owns more than half of the Arctic coastline, and it knows the value of that position. Since early 2000s, Moscow has been building up the Arctic like a fortress. 24 military bases, dozens of warships and submarines, missile systems, airfields, radar stations, and the world's largest fleet of icebreakers, more than 50 of them. The US has 5, China just 1. Moscow's goal is crystal clear: control the Northern Sea route. If Russia can make it the main artery for shipping between Asia and Europe, it can collect fees, control traffic, and project power like never before. But it's not just about money. Russia has already shown it's willing to use the Arctic as a pressure point. From jamming GPS signals, to staging military exercises near NATO territory, to probing undersea internet cables. And after the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the Arctic has become another front line in Moscow's standoff with the West. China doesn't own Arctic territory, but that hasn't stopped Beijing from declaring itself a near-Arctic state. In 2018, it launched the Polar Silk Road, part of its Belt and Road initiative. China sees the Arctic as a chance to cut shipping costs, secure new sources of minerals, and lay the digital infrastructure like polar internet cables that could connect Asia to Europe in new ways. It has invested hundreds of billions of dollars in Arctic projects, from rare earth mining in Greenland to joining shipping ventures with Russia. Militarily, China has been cautious, but it's increasing its presence, joint patrol with Russia's ships, and even bomber flights near Alaska. But there is a tension here. Russia wants to keep the Arctic under its own control. China wants to make it more open international zone so it can have access. They cooperate for now, but it's fragile alliance. For the US, respectively NATO, the Arctic used to be a secondary theater. Not anymore. With Finland joining in 2023 and Sweden in 2024, 7 of the 8 Arctic nations are now NATO members. That leaves Russia completely outnumbered in the region. NATO is holding more Arctic war games, training soldiers for extreme cold and investing in seabed to space surveillance. And the goal? Make sure the Arctic's new shipping lines stay open and make sure Russia can't dominate them unchallenged. But NATO has weaknesses. It has far fewer icebreakers, fewer Arctic-ready bases, and its members still struggle to coordinate in such a vast and hostile environment. For Europe, the Arctic is both an opportunity and a headache. If the Northern Sea route becomes fully navigable, European importers could get goods from Asia much faster and cheaper. That's great for trade, especially the northern port like Rotterdam, Hamburg and Antwerp. But there is a catch. This shortcut runs along Russia's coast. That means in crisis Moscow could choke off Europe's access. And Europe's own Arctic territories, Greenland for Denmark, Svalbard for Norway, are becoming strategic flashpoints. Not just for shipping, but for energy, minerals and even space communications. European governments are now realizing they can't ignore the top of the world. It's not just about polar research anymore, it's about national security. At first glance, Africa seems far away from the Arctic game, but the changes here will ripple all the way south. First, the bad news for Africa. The Northern Sea route and Northwest Passage could reduce reliance on the Suez Canal. That's a blow to Egypt, which earns billions from canal tolls. If shipping shifts north, Suez revenue could drop sharply, affecting Egypt's economy and potentially its political stability. For resource exporting African countries, there is another risk. If Arctic oil and gas enter the market in huge volumes, it could undercut prices for African producers like Nigeria and Angola. But there is also opportunity. Countries like Morocco and South Africa could become staging points for companies adapting to the new trade routes. And as Arctic minerals become more important, African countries rich in similar resources could gain leverage by partnering with Arctic states. In geopolitics, every shift creates winners and losers, often at the same time. Why this matters to everyone? The Arctic is changing because of climate change, but it's becoming dangerous because of geopolitics. Russia wants dominance, China wants access, NATO wants to keep it open. Europe is caught between opportunity and vulnerability. Africa is bracing for economic ripple effects, and beyond that, the stakes are global. If tensions boil over here, it won't just be about ice and oil. It could disrupt global shipping, energy markets and even the internet, because some of the world's most important undersea cables may soon run through the Arctic. The Arctic Council, once a forum for cooperation, has been paralyzed since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That leaves no strong framework to manage disputes. And as the ice melts farther each year, the window for peaceful agreements is closing. The Arctic is no longer a frozen wasteland. It's the world's newest geopolitical hotspot, a place where climate change, technology and military power all collide. It's a race for resources, a race for shipping lines, a race for influence. And like every race in history, someone is going to win, someone is going to lose, and the rest of us will feel the consequences. And the only question is how much ice has to melt before we find out. Thanks for watching and see you in the next episode.